First, it's a great pleasure to speak to you from Puttaparthi, which is the abode of peace. My name is Isaac Tigrett. I've been coming to Puttaparthi since I was 24 years old. I'll be 64 shortly, although I feel like a 14-year-old boy trapped in a 64-year-old body, and have been completely and totally blessed to be under the guidance of my master and teacher, Sri Sathya Sai Baba. As we all are aware, he left his body over a year or so ago, and it's been a very interesting thing. He told me many years ago that many devotees would be leaving him. And I think he arranged all kinds of rumors and situations to occur that really, as he said, separate the wheat from the chaff. We are all here basically on a personal journey to discover our true identity and nothing more. People seek their spiritual identity either from time of being very young, where it becomes a predominant aspect of why am I here. Many don't look for that identity until mortality is staring them in the face, but it doesn't make any difference. I've been very blessed to be near the form, which means nothing. I'll never forget, after some 20 years, in about 2006 or so, Swami at first told me that I should stay here for the rest of my life, which is where I'm speaking to you from the room that he gave me 25 years ago, which is my home here in the abode of peace. It was an extraordinary experience for his leaving the body. There were many reasons that people came here, and they're basically privately between him and the individual. Some came to see the miraculous show of it went on twice a day with something called darshan, when he would appear, and his energy was extreme. It would affect some people in a very dramatic way. It would put other people in awe. But it was basically, to many, an event, a show. Some came to get a blessing. Some came out of curiosity for the Guru of Gurus, which India has always had a Pacific master of tremendous importance to the country and to Hinduism, and Sai Baba was certainly that. He was also the most powerful political figure in this country, which I don't think people really understood because of his unique position and because of the nature of the Hindu culture. Sai Baba could reach out to anyone in this country politically, whether it be the Prime Minister or Sonia Gandhi. I watched him entertain the last 7 or 8 Prime Ministers over the many years that I've been here. And if he wanted anything, he, not even personally, but would have his secretary simply call and they would immediately respond. Many came here, of course, during a political election time to get the photo op with the great Sai Baba, probably to get some extra votes. Some were quite sincere and remained devotees. But this is a personal journey that we're all on, and I have to say that, for me, because of the amazing phenomenon that I have experienced by being blessed to have been close to him and have him guide me in my life on a personal basis, which is not important. It gave everyone the wrong impression of me. People have an image that because one person is closer to the form, that they are more advanced or more important than others. This couldn't be further from the truth. As Sai Baba has said to all of us in his teachings over and over and over again, you're all divine beings. I'm a divine being, you're a divine being. The only difference has been throughout history with all of these masters that have appeared on the planet is they have become realized beings or merged with their true personality, which is divinity. They know it, and unfortunately we don't. We're on that journey to try to find that identity. So being close to the form is totally irrelevant and gives people the wrong impression of the people that were blessed to be close. No one knows why. He had one person perhaps closer than another, but it meant nothing to him. He was not here, I can assure you, to build hospitals, to build ashrams, to do water projects, to create a huge organization. These were all basically movie sets in which people were brought together to learn, but in particularly to experience the only thing that he was interested in, which was your personal transformation. That was, as has been with all divine masters, their main reason for incarnating on the planet and for people to come within their aura or their energy fields. Sai Baba is not the first, nor will he be the last divine master that has evolved on this planet. Those that we know, and there are many, many that we are not aware of that have been here, all came, whether it be the Buddha, who only had a handful of people that were around him during the short time he was here. Zarathustra, who was here for the religion that formed after he left, and which was the interesting part of his writings and so forth. As with all the writings of all the masters, Jesus Christ had 12 disciples, was only really around for 2 or 3 years in Jerusalem, and had a small following. Muhammad was here for a short time, also with just a handful of people around him. Going back into the history of Hinduism, Krishna, who lived 5,380 years ago, beyond belief, and had only a handful of people around him that had any inclination of who he was. And Lord Rama, another Hindu realized being, only had 12 rishis who knew who he was. But they all left behind not only their vibrations on this planet, but writings, things that were written about them. The Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Old Testament, which Moses was here to gift to the world. The New Testament about Jesus Christ, the Quran, which Muhammad delivered, the writings of Buddha, which were left behind by him, and the writings of Sai Baba. What happens is that, because these massive religions have been formed around these men long after they've gone, and none of them really came here to start a religion, as Sai Baba has said when he came here. And of course, the most interesting thing is it was always with him all-inclusive of all religions, which he spoke of often. He was not here to start a new religion or a new following. But what happens with all of these divine beings is they leave behind these teachings and these writings. And people at some time on their journey trying to discover their spiritual definition will open up one of these books, and the energy of these divine words, or as they say in the Vedas, the Jyoti light, comes out of these writings and suddenly affect individuals and say, oh my God, I get it. This has changed my whole life. I'm a Hindu because it's the Hindu culture, and they've read the Bhagavad Gita, or they've read the Quran, or they've read the Old Testament or the New Testament or whatever. And that's when these religions formed and swept the planet, because of the power and the energy left behind in these words, and also the energy of these beings themselves. They say that Sai Baba has gone, and Jesus has gone, and Buddha has gone, and Muhammad has gone. Yet Jesus, who died 212,000 years ago, has over 1 billion devotees on this planet, where he started off with 12. Muhammad, who died 900 years ago, has hundreds and hundreds of millions of devotees who follow his teachings. Lord Buddha as well has millions and millions of people who follow his teachings, and so on and so forth. These masters come not all at the same time, but they came at particular times in certain cultures. It was the same energy. All of their writings say exactly the same thing. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Follow the basic values, human values of life, of love and peace and truth and righteousness. It's all the same message, but they occurred at a particular time in history in various cultures around the world, in which these religions sprang and proliferate to this day. It's so funny though, because in the organizational sense of religions, including the organization that has been left behind by Sai Baba and created around him, him being the first, I can only say, international master to arrive because of the proliferation of broadcasting, the internet, instead of these other masters who had only handfuls of people. This modern master had millions of people that found out about him, were affected by his writings, as I was, because that's what really changed my life, not particularly him, who was and is and remains an enigma completely to all of us, because only a realized being can recognize another realized being. I think that's why he said, I can count my true devotees on one hand. I believe he's speaking of the 5 other avatars that exist now on this planet, because they are the only ones who could truly recognize him. There's various theories of who these masters may or may not be. Babaji in Hinduism, who lived hundreds of years ago. Saint Germain, who lived hundreds of years ago, who has affected the Christian faith. And I think there are others that are here, whether in South America or other parts of the planet, and these are really the 5 true devotees, because how could you possibly understand an enigma of a realized being unless you were a realized being? But with Sai Baba, it was a very interesting way in which he used me, and basically used my presence and image and my closeness to him to do his work. One day, after 20 years of sitting on the veranda, he called me. This was about 2006, at approximately the time in which he told me to stay here until the end of my days, which I am doing, with tremendous happiness that he even allowed me to stay here and be part of the energy that's in this place. But he called me out to where he sat in front of his devotees. And he said, Tigrett, he said, you have a backache. And I said, no, Swami, I don't have a backache. And being on my knees next to him in his chair, he immediately grabbed my back and forced my torso, my upper body, across his, which I don't know if anyone has ever laid in his lap in public, but shocked me and of course many of the people who were there. And he started rubbing one little spot behind my right shoulder and rubbing in a small circle. And in the meantime, people were coming up and he was blessing this and talking to them about that. And this went on for about 10 or 15 minutes. And I was totally confused as to what was going on, as I'm sure everybody else, because no one really knew what he was ever doing, which is part of the excitement of being around a being like this. I left that morning and went home, and before I got home in my room, which is where we are recording this today, I suddenly had the worst backache that I have ever had or ever experienced, or pain I've ever experienced in my life. It was as if somebody had taken a knife or an ice pick and jammed it into this tiny little spot that he'd been rubbing. That afternoon at the darshan, or his appearance, he called me over and he said, Tigrett, do you have a backache? And I said, Swami, I have the worst backache that I have ever had in my entire life. And he immediately called to Savior Dolls. He says, bring a chair. And they brought this chair, and I'd been sitting on the floor like everyone else had done. And he said, put the chair there, and he put it right in front in a place where people who were sitting in the crowds, which could be 20,000 people, which was being filmed on a daily basis, could only really see me, because I was sitting up in a chair and everyone else was sitting down on the floor behind a brass railing and so forth. And when he told me to sit in the chair, I said, Swami, I'm sorry, I can't sit in that chair. Being extremely aware of metaphysics, and which is another subject that's impossible to really relate to you, that the evil eye would be on me. No one was going to be out there saying, oh, I'm so happy for Mr. Tigrett sitting up there on the veranda, you know, so close to the master. And I said, Swami, I cannot sit there without your protection, because, you know, there will be such dynamic evil energy. And he said, that's right, Tigrett. He said, I will protect you. He said, but you now have a role to play for me. You are my bait for evil. And I went, oh my God, bait for evil, what a job. And then immediately I realized, having studied his methodology as much as I could, that Swami was indeed, and acted like, many times, a Zen master. And traditionally the way a Zen master would work is that he would draw out of the devotees and the people around him the things that needed to be changed. So being a bait for evil meant that he was going to use me to create envy for sitting there, jealousy, which eventually leads to anger and hatred. And I would truly be his bait for evil. Even though he was protecting me, I could hear the little ding, 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 ding going on around me in this protective orb that he gave me to put on, which I put on like an overcoat every morning in front of this particular Ganesha statue before I went to sit in my chair as the bait for evil. And I realized, and it's, you know, having been here for so many years, this is not an abode of peace, or at least during the last years. It was more like an insane asylum. If you came here and transformation was his main purpose of bringing someone here, if that was their karma to be here, and their problem was anger, then he would see to it that they were angry as possibly can be the entire time that they were here, till they got to the point of being uncontrollable, and they would realize, gee, I got a problem with anger. I got to work on anger. Or if it was lust, or envy, or hatred, or jealousy, or whatever it might be, he would draw this out of you. This was part of his grace and his gift to you, to make you see exactly what your problem was and what you had to work on. The only way any of these masters could possibly transform you, because we're so self-involved, is to bring out of you that which needs to be changed and have you face it full forth. He had another delightful trick, is that if you didn't get it and you were suffering from anger, he would send to sit next to you and be with you all the time someone who was even more angry than you were, so that you could realize that, God, being angry is not cool and I need to do something about this. So for these many years, I took on this amazing responsibility, which to me was a gift, but only as I insisted, and he was kind enough to protect me. Having the job as a bait for evil, it sounds like a pretty serious job, but if you believe in the Master and you trust the Master, which is so important for all devotees, is to trust and accept that he knows what's best, which is a very difficult thing, because you are giving up your ego and you're allowing yourself to put yourself in the hands of what you consider to be your teacher or master. We are trapped in a strange delusion, especially here in the Kali Yuga. And the Kali Yuga has been, as all religions, every single one in their books, whether it be the Quran or the New Testament or Old Testament, talk about various ages or yugas which will occur simultaneously, and that the final age before the promised golden age, when our consciousness will be raised, is called in Hinduism the Kali Yuga. This is supposed to be the darkest hour, which we are in now, that man has ever been in or witnessed or experienced. It means that the mind and the body are overstimulated, and that we have no choice but to believe that we are the mind and we are the body, which we are not. We are all immortal beings. We are the light body. That which has never been born can never die, and that's what you are. Your light body, which is your divine aspect, it cannot be harmed, it can't be hurt, it can't be damaged, it can't be soiled. And that is the journey to understanding your true identity as the light body. But in this Kali Yuga, which is about to end, or is coming to an end according to information and speeches, discourses that this master gave, which I sat next to him 2.5 years ago, when he said the Kali Yuga will be over and this new age of consciousness will begin, which has been promised in every single religion. And that will happen in 27 years, which is now 24.5 years from now. So at this particular moment in time, as we all notice and we're all aware through the collective consciousness which has occurred because of communication, the internet, broadcasting, we're no longer one country or another. We're this world consciousness. We know immediately anything that occurs anywhere on the planet within seconds. And right now, we are in this darkest hour, which is always before the dawn, and the world has gone mad. I don't care if you are the richest man in the world or a king, or whether you're the poorest and a beggar. Everyone has lost their confidence. There is nothing but strife and hatred and anger, brutality, civil war, fear, going on throughout the planet, in every single individual. We are overstimulated, our mind and body, by this Maya, or the delusion of the world, which has been turned up to the max. And there is a battle between good and evil going on between and in each one of us every day, dozens, if not hundreds of times a day. A guy drives by in a better car than yours, and you go, oh, I'm inadequate, I don't have a nice car like this guy. A woman goes by in a very famous designer suit or carrying a Gucci bag, so other women feel inferior and that they're not as advanced as that person, as if material things really meant you were more advanced, knowing full well you can't take it with you. And that's not the reason we're here, for acquisition of transient, meaningless things. But that has, in our consciousness on this planet today, become the gold, the silver, the diamonds, the jewels, which we all seek. The mind and body are completely overstimulated. We who wish, including myself, to look towards the inward path where the real jewels and diamonds and gold appear and are, and the only thing worth possessing, have no choice because of this overstimulation. We have something which is the 5 friends of this delusion, that we are the mind and the body, called the 5 senses. You wake up in the morning, you open your eyes and you see, you smell, you touch, you taste, you hear, and immediately being controlled by the ego, which does die with you. The ego tells you from these sensations, from its 5 best friends, that you are nothing more than the mind and the body. And you then spend the rest of the day in delusion and recognizing everyone else not as a divine being equal to your own divinity, but as something that's either superior or inferior to you. It's a strange time, this dark hour. We actually worship the differences between ourselves. I'm a rich man, I'm better than a poor man. I'm an American, I'm better than a Mexican or a Canadian. I am a healthy person, I'm better than one that's not healthy, and so on and so forth. We should be and will be in the new age worshiping the sameness that we all share, which is this thread of divinity that goes through all of us and makes us collectively one. All is one of the expressions that Sai Baba gave. Unity in diversity. These were wonderful bylines and clues to really what's going on, which people are truly not interested in because the Maya is so powerful now that it's impossible to do anything but be in a serious state of judgment with yourself and everyone around you. But this is the way it's supposed to be right now. The world has gone mad. There's hatred, anger, fear, all of these horrific and amplified feelings, which is perfectly correct for this moment. because the karma, or this energy that is now pervading the consciousness of the entire planet, must come out. It cannot be taken into the promised new age of consciousness. It will simply soil it and distort it. And so it must come out of all of us, and the earth and the countries even have karmas. It must come out now. So we are all going, my God, the end of the world is coming. According to the Mayan calendar, we're going to be nuclear bombed at any time. And most importantly, and the most obvious of all, is that the biosphere is collapsing on our heads. The Greeks, and practically every culture, referred to the earth as a goddess. The Greek called the earth the goddess Gaia, and look how beautiful and magnificent she is. It's extraordinary beauty, this planet. And yet, through selfishness and ignorance, we are destroying the planet. And as we well know now, even though a dear friend and one of the first to recognize it, Al Gore, some 25 years ago, who was laughed at for coming up with a series of facts and figures from other concerned scientists around the world, that the planet was dying. We now know that that is correct. We have global warming. We know that that's happening on the planet. We know that the ozone holes, or holes in the ozone, have occurred at the north and south poles. We know that the underground water system is being poisoned by all the unfortunate things we put on the soil to grow foodstuffs and so forth, which will eventually mean, as scientists have recently reported, that the very food we grow will become carcinogenic. In fact, cancer has risen 1,000 times from 100 years ago because of the carcinogenics and the things that we have put into our lives without any care or respect for the goddess. Well, if the earth dies, then we die, and civilization comes to an end. And I believe the goddess is pissed off and will eject, just as our bodies have antibodies that get rid of all the things that soil or threaten us. I think that the goddess Gaia will throw us off the planet before she simply gives up and dies. Maybe this is a proper stepping stone to create a new renaissance on the planet, and to start all over again, especially if you believe that you are reincarnated. I personally would love to come back to a clean and spotless new world that's filled with people who are looking for the gold and silver, not on the outside, but on the inner journey, which is where eventually we will all end up. I have been blessed to work with young people my entire life. Whenever I spoke, which Swami has only allowed me to speak a couple of times, we talked about it, and he would always say, focus on the young ones. They are the future. They are the ones who are wide open, like sponges, absorbing and needing to know the answers to questions which an older generation don't have, and have become solidified in ancient thought and are actually impossible to change. Older folk need to unlearn before they can relearn, which is a very difficult task and very frightening to them. Whereas the young ones are completely open, ready to absorb, ready to learn, ready to re-identify with life and its meaning, because the world that the older folk have created is not giving them the answers which they want. In my earlier generation, there were thousands of bombers ready to destroy the entire world with a nuclear annihilation. And every day at school we would have sirens go off and do a drill to hide in basements because the world was coming to an end. Everybody was building fallout shelters. There was no doubt that nuclear annihilation was imminent. It's very interesting because that's when the peace and love generation began in the 60s, and this was very much a part of why. If you were to do studies from kindergarten on up as to what young people were afraid of, it would have been nuclear, and was nuclear annihilation. It was in the papers, it was all over, it's what everyone talked about, it was, it was real, and there was this Cold War. I and many of my generation were absolutely disenchanted with the way evolution had happened socially for so long. You're a young person, you're at 16 to 21, 22, you are fearless. The world is your oyster. You put on a backpack and go anywhere in the world you wanted. You were open to all new ideas. You had the energy. You weren't focused narrowly on anything. Then suddenly, at 25 or so, you got a job. And the next thing you know, you were working in a very strange political environment of a corporation. And you began to contract because to be part of a corporation, you have to brown nose the boss. You have to act in a way in which you are viewed as an important asset, and you will steal other people's ideas or hide when the axe comes out to cut a few people away. Next thing you know, you have a car and car payments. And then you have a wife who you're responsible to, and a family, and a mortgage on your house. You will do anything that's necessary to maintain this lifestyle. And in the process of being really in fear of losing this lifestyle, your world contracts, and the freedom and the amazing sense of the world belongs to you, which it does, leaves you. And by the time you're 30, you have joined the old boy network. You've accepted the means, the mores of what's happening and what you were taught by this older generation and this amazing corporate structure which you've been thrust into, and you lose the plot completely. You lose your freedom for thinking. You contract. You become victimized by your environment, of which we all are. That's why it's so important to choose the environment that you're in, especially now. We had a fantastic expression, which I still use to this day and feel religiously about, is don't trust anyone over 30. And I still don't, because they have joined the old boy network. They have entered a world which they cannot change, and they are not open any longer to the freedoms that they had experienced in their youth. I would rather deal with young people, and as some of you may know, I was blessed to open something called the Hard Rock Cafe when I was 22 years old in London, not having a clue that it would become a massive international organization representing the youth culture and music and American lifestyle. And also something called the House of Blues, which is throughout the United States, large venues for concerts, of which we do 18 to 19,000 shows a year. And I was always one of the youngest cats there. I mean, especially in the hard rock days. And I've spent my entire life with young people that work in restaurants or these type of venues. First of all, it's very multicultural. They're from every background you could possibly imagine. but they're all under the age of 30. And that's what my great blessing was, at one point having over 10,000 young people that I was blessed to work with and struggle to guide under the many problems that people have in the evolution of their life, and base my company on the basic human values, which I discovered here at this ashram, of very simple things. Peace. Are you running a peaceful place? Is the environment that you've created one of peace? Love, big word. Is this a loving place? Is this a place where there is a positive vibration of mutual respect and care for each other, and everyone has a common voice? Righteousness. Righteousness means doing the right thing. Is everybody doing the right thing, or are people picking up some of these negative values and lying and cheating and making decisions according to what's best for them or best for the collective? Satya, truth. Are people telling the truth? Is the whole place based on honesty? Or is it based on a delusion of various mores which are actually have no depth whatsoever? So these 5 basic values, including nonviolence, and nonviolence just doesn't mean physical nonviolence, it means mental nonviolence. The most powerful thing which you can do on this planet is not physical, it's mental. Hatred. You can bring bad vibrations into anyone's neighborhood simply by sending hate to them, or lust, or anger. So that's why this and many, many other masters have said, watch your thoughts. It's the most powerful thing you can do. And we do it without thinking. Jealousy, envy. I mean, I'm the bait for evil. I've been watching this all day long, thankfully protected by my master, and in the process being reminded that I too am on a constant journey of remembering that these things must not seep into my life, and that I must forgive myself primarily first, because it's important, because then the next step is the forgiveness of others. This is the one and only path to true, dynamic, universal love. First, forgiving yourself, and we're all very hard on ourselves for whatever. This then allows you to take positively the next step, which is the forgiveness of others. If you cannot do these 2 things, you are wasting time, you are wasting life, and this is a terrible sin to the continuing existence that you have. I am happy to have spent this time with you. I hope I've imparted a few things to you that can be helpful to you. I am here till the end of my days here at the Abode of Peace, which it certainly has become now. Sai Baba is not gone anywhere. He is more accessible now than he ever was before. His Maya was dangerous. The second he walked through that door, we all started practicing duality, which was the very thing that made us fall from the garden thousands of years ago. We forgot our identity. And the second he arrived, which is part of the phenomenon, you would say, oh, God's over there and I'm over here. You separate yourself from understanding your true identity. Now he is not here to distract you. Many, many of you young people have been pushed around by the organization of the religion. To me, religion is nothing more than a corporation that doesn't pay taxes. Spirituality is our own individual journey that we are all on to the same place. I wish you all a happy journey, an educational journey, and one in which you can learn to forgive yourself and others and be an addition to the family of man. God bless you all, and Sai Ram.